to this afternoon session. Hope you enjoyed lunch and you don't feel heavy because, we have a great program ahead. My name is Stamatis Kotuzas. I'm a senior land administration specialist with the World Bank based in Seoul, South Korea, working in the East Asia Pacific and South Asia regions. Welcome to today's session on land use planning and management, a critical function for governments worldwide and in these regions as demands on land resources continue to rise. As we face the challenges posed by climate change and urbanization, effective management of limited land resources becomes essential. So this session will explore the land implications of climate commitments in the region and how countries are implementing land use planning and management strategies to meet these demands, to address climate change and mitigate disaster risks. The session will begin with a presentation by Ms. Jenny Lisher, Senior Land Administration Specialist at the World Bank, on the land implications of nationally determined contributions, providing the foundational understanding of the role of land in climate commitments. And then we will have three country presentations from Indonesia, India, and a more regional in scope on Pacific Island countries. We want to make this as interactive as we can, so I will kindly ask our speakers to limit themselves to the allocated time, and we start with you, Jenny, and 10 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Stamatis, and welcome everyone again to our second session of the Asia Regional Workshop. I'm Jenny Lisher, and a Senior Land Administration Specialist at the World Bank. And so to set the scene, we're going to talk about the land implications of the National Determined Contributions, or the NDCs. This was a study that we did together with the University of Melbourne to take a look at a deeper dive into the land gap analysis that was done in 2022 and updated in 2023. So it takes the Climate Watch data and looks specifically at the East Asia Pacific and the South Asia region to understand what are the implications, especially to land, of these NDCs. So land, as we've talked about throughout the conference, is a critical foundation for climate action. And when I say climate action, it involves a lot of different sectors, right? We're talking about agriculture. We're talking about the transition to renewable energy. We're talking about transport corridors and green and compact cities, right? So a lot of things are filing under climate action here, but it's really, you can think of this as kind of the goals of the governments in the East Asia Pacific and South Asia region between now and 2030 per the Paris agreements. So when we did a deep dive into the East Asia Pacific and South Asia region, about 1 in 2 climate actions in East Asia Pacific and South Asia region have land implications. This is about over 3,900 climate actions. In fact, it's about 47% in 47% in mitigation actions and another 45 in adaptation actions. They fall into 2 categories. There's direct land implications, and then there's other land implications. So direct land implications are, you have to access the land itself, or there has to be a land use change. It talks about actions like you're going to increase something, expand something, construct something. So you have to actually change the land or have land acquisition to be able to carry out this action. The other side of things is other land. This includes things like land planning or land management, where there's not a direct need to change the land use allocation or to access the land, but there's some sort of implication still involved in it. Okay. So what does this mean in terms of a land footprint? So in fact, it's really hard to take some of these Climate Watch data and turn them into a land footprint. Overall, globally, the Land Gap Report found there was 1 billion hectares that was going to be required by 2030 for land-related activities. We took about 80 of the actions where we could find a footprint, and it found that there was almost 100 million hectares of land that's going to be required. By 2030. About 36% of this was from the South Asia region, and the East Asia Pacific was the other 2/3 of this. you have to realize here also like what we're talking about in terms of action. So this just is dealing with the forest and energy actions. So if you look at energy, you're talking about 5 hectares per megawatt of energy, and so you're really talking about large footprints as you're trying to transition to these renewable energy actions. So better for the environment, yet at the same time, you need to think about the land implications and how countries are going to be able to transition to meet these commitments. So what does that mean in terms of total land area? So it ranges from about 0.1% all the way up to 15%. So places like Thailand and Cambodia, I know it's really, really small, but it's about 15% of their total land area that you're talking about. If you look at South Asia, Afghanistan and Nepal are at about 8% total land area. India, obviously, with its larger landmass, is about 70% of the land that's been pledged from the region, and is about 8%. But if you look at the individual, what it actually means for the country itself, looking at the percentage of land, so at the 15% level, if you think about the amount of land use change that's going to be required between now and 2025 to 2030, that's a large portion of land. And how are we going to do that? How can governments meet this demand that's been committed? So if you break it down into South Asia region, about 72% of total land commitments in SAR require land use change. India, as I said, is about the largest, and then you can look here at which countries. The darker green is those where land use change is required. The lighter green is where it's land use change isn't required. So places like Afghanistan, Bangladesh actually don't have a lot of land use change required, but India, Nepal, and Pakistan are requiring land use change on the majority of their commitments. So when you look at East Asia Pacific, it's kind of interesting because places like Indonesia actually are saying that their commitments right now do not require land use change. But China and Australia, which are the largest amounts of land overall, are requiring land use change, as are places like New Zealand and North Korea and Thailand. So what does it mean in terms of a sector standpoint? So if you're looking at the which sectors are going to be involved here, they actually 75% of actions come down to 5 sectors. Those are the forestry, energy, transport, environment, and agriculture. And so that's where you're going to see the biggest demand from sectors who are looking to acquire or grab land permits. They'll be from one of those sectors. So what does this mean for each of the regions specifically? When you look at East Asia, again, dark green being direct land access, light green being other land access, and the gray is it doesn't require a land commitment. You're looking at forestry, agriculture, and energy. Agriculture is coming really from the East Asia Pacific region. The South Asia region and the Pacific aren't dealing with agriculture as much. Forestry and energy sectors, you'll see those actions for all 3 of the areas. For Pacific, what comes in is forest and energy again, but also coastal actions, which makes sense considering the climate change, and we'll hear more about some of the Pacific cases when Stamatis has a chance to speak. And then in South Asia, interestingly, we're talking about transport. And the World Bank last year finished a study on constraints and access to land for infrastructure, and found that land is a main constraint in South Asia. So it's delaying transport investments, it's delaying energy investments, and so it makes sense and correlates with corresponds with this data talking that transport is one of the main sectors, and you don't see this in the other regions. This just gives you a list of kind of the different types of investments that we're talking about. So if you're looking at renewable energy targets, you would be talking about land use change for new infrastructure or distribution lines. If you're looking at agriculture, you're looking at land use change for the protected areas. You could change access to those areas. For transport, you would need land access for the roads or the buffer zones. And right now, there's when you look at this, how is a country going to decide, right? There's all sorts of competing demands on the land. And so, you know, in the middle, you know, I come from an urban side, right? So, you know, he's saying, look, we're going to have some, I prefer to call it suburban sprawl, but we're going to call it sustainable overdevelopment instead of sustainable development. And then you have your energy, your forestry, your agriculture, your infrastructure. And so some way the government has to figure out how it's going to be able to manage these competing actions for land. And we'll hear about how Indonesia and India and the Pacific are dealing with some of these. The study found that they really boil down based on a literature review on 5 main actions that are needed. The first one is around effective land policies and regulations. So these are going to guide, they're going to provide the incentive structures, they're going to guide how land use is allocated, how it's utilized. It'll put the right incentive structures in place. And the key here is to facilitate land use change while at the same time preserving existing land rights. So what sort of policies and regulations are available? And you can go into the study to learn a bit more about what some of those would be. The second one is around securing land tenure. So we need comprehensive and clear land use rights and boundaries. You heard, you know, Mika talk about this in his session in the plenary this morning, that incentivize these sustainable agricultural practices, namely that farmers are willing to adopt these improved agricultural practices, that it'll decrease risk. So different, whether it's a private investor or a public investment or you know, a farmer or somebody who's living in the forest, that they'll make investments in the land. It'll reduce conflict, and while supporting things like land valuation, land acquisition, and carbon markets. A lot of times, in order to share in the benefit streams of climate action, you need to have tenure security. If you go in and you don't actually understand the existing tenure rights, they're not able to participate in the benefits that can come from these climate actions. The third is around modern and efficient land administration systems. So how do we get this theme has kept on coming up throughout the conference. It was talked about in Wednesday's plenary as well. So how do we have, accurate and up-to-date spatial data and land information systems that are integrated, that are interoperable, so we can see the different land data across different agencies. That are necessary for this informed decision making, so we can have effective land use planning, so we can have effective land management and monitoring, so you can have land markets and conflict resolution. And so a lot of the investments that we're doing recently in the East Asia, Pacific, and South Asia region are really dealing with this piece, right? We're working on how to improve and modernize these land administration systems. And then on integrated land use planning is the fourth one. And we'll prioritize and optimize land use. So this is what we're talking about. How do we deal with the competing demands? So can we integrate these spatial plans together? A lot of this is dependent on whether you have accurate data to begin with. Do you have comprehensive data to be able to make decisions on integrated spatial planning? So then you can make the decisions on how to prioritize land use. One of the things that came up in the paper is dual land use. So for example, agrivoltaic systems, you can build solar panels at the same time on farmland. And so the solar panels shade the agricultural crops and benefit, and you can have mutual benefits from having dual land use. But in order to do that, you need to understand all the existing land use rights and boundaries. And then community consultation, which came up, I think, in Marcus's presentation as well, but how do you ensure equity and incorporation of the local knowledge? And if you have community consultations ahead of these investments, then you can get around or mitigate the chances of conflict that comes up. So one of the things that came up in both the South Asia study as well as this study on access to land for climate action and infrastructure were these investments that came up that didn't properly consult the communities ahead of time. And so if they're consulted ahead of time, they have buy-in, the investments, then the investments are able to move forward and have mutual benefits. So with that, I will stop my presentation and turn it back over to Stamatis. Hopefully everyone can have a chance to look at the larger study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny, and I'm sure that there will be questions and interest from what you presented for the panel discussion. Let's now turn into our first country presentation from Indonesia. We have two presenters from Indonesia. We're going to start with Pak Ade Komara, who's the Director of Topographic Mapping for Land Areas of the Geospatial Information Agency. Pak Ade.
Okay, thank you, Stamatis, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm from the Geospatial Information Agency, the national mapping agency of Indonesia. One of our mandate is to provide the base map for the whole country at various scales. Our nation, our government has been realizing the importance of base map as the fundamental dataset or the foundation dataset for our development activities, including spatial planning. Which button should I push? Okay. So talking about spatial planning, we have a hierarchy, starting with the National Spatial Plan that is to be presented at 1 to 1 million map scale. And from that, we derive the island or regional spatial plan at 1 to 500,000 map scale, and so on, down to the most detailed plan at 1 to 1,000, which is building and environment spatial plan. The special attention must be given to detailed spatial plan, the second from the bottom, at 1 to 5,000 map scale, because that's the plan that must be incorporated in our business permitting system, the so-called OSS, Online Single Submission. Our EODB ranking is 73, so we like to improve that. And one of the most challenging problems in our investment is the permit process. It's considered by many as high cost, not enough transparency, too many uncertainties, and so on and so on. So we would like to improve that by establishing the so-called OSS, Online Single Submission, in 2018. And one of the reference for OSS is the spatial, the detailed spatial plan. So if one one business permit request is coming to the OSS will check whether the business activities being requested is in line with the detailed spatial plan. If it is the case, then there is no reason to, to make more complicated process than it is. So it can go, it can proceed to the next steps. However, if from the beginning it is known that the permit is not in line or not in accordance with the spatial plan, then it can be rejected right away from the beginning. So it will improve the transparency and reducing some uncertainty in the process. So of course, to construct detailed spatial plan, we need the base map. Because the detailed spatial plan must be constructed at 1 to 5,000 map scale, so we need to provide base map also at that scale, 1 to 5,000 map scale. I would like to make a note on the term of scale, because we are now living in a digital era. So we assign a meaning to scale, not as the the ratio between the distance on the map to the distance on the field. So with the scale, we mean actually more on the quality of the data of the map in terms of more detailed information and the level of accuracy. So map at 1 to 5,000, of course, will have more detailed information, and will have more better accuracy than the maps at 1 to 25,000. Next one, please. There are several mandates from the law for us to provide the base maps. So one of the fortunate thing for us is, that base map of 1 to 1,000, or there's a typo, 1 to 1,000 base map is only established in priority areas. It means we don't need to provide 1 to 1,000 base map for the whole country. That's something that really fast. However, it means that base map of 1 to 5,000 and smaller scales up to 1 to 1 million should be provided for the whole country. There are also some presidential regulations emphasizing the needs of base maps. I would like to emphasize Presidential Regulation number 93, 2019. It asks, or it mandates our agency to produce 1 to 5,000 base map that shall be used as a reference in earthquake and tsunami-based spatial planning. So in this regulation, explicitly say that our spatial planning should consider disaster activities that happens a lot in our country, including earthquake and tsunami. Next one, please. We are facing challenges in providing base map of Indonesia. The biggest challenge is the huge area, the land area of us, almost 2 million kilometers square. We know that producing base map of high quality is not cheap. It means that we need lots and lots of money. That's the biggest challenge. Also, the weather condition. We are a tropical area, so we have a very large cloud cover area. There are even some areas that covered by cloud all year long, so the cloud doesn't move. They would like to stay there. So there's the challenges. And because of that, until 2021, we were only able to complete 2.5% of the land area for 1 to 5K base map. So the urgency or the needs for a base map of 1.5K is increasing, including the improvement of our investment climate. So last year we started the acceleration program to provide the base map of 1 to 5K. We're able to finish for Sulawesi Island, which is about 180,000 kilometer square in 1 year. So I would like to continue that program in this year until 2028. Yeah. With the help of World Bank funding, among others. Next one, please. So we are currently having a project funded by the World Bank. In this project, there's a component to produce large-scale base maps for climate action, component 4. Next one, please. And this is our strategy to produce a base map as quick as possible, as fast as possible, as cheap as possible, and as good as possible. So three aspects. We would like to have it cheap, fast, and good. Almost impossible combination. You can have two, not the other one. So we try to do that by defining our or by classifying our area into urban, rural, and forest. So we are not going to produce one level of quality of the data, but we adjust it accordingly. So we are going to produce the best data for urban areas because that's the most need is there, and then the middle quality for rural areas, and the lowest quality but still complies with our standard for the forest area at 1 to 5K. And because of this compromise, we decide on the technology that, of course, for the urban areas to produce the best quality data, we use the best technology available right now, aerial photography, photogrammetry, and LiDAR. However, the compromise is for rural and forest area. we will deploy a much lower cost technology, which is airborne radar with satellite imagery. And based on our studies, this method or this combination of technology still can produce 1 to 5K base map according to our standard. So we will produce 8 layers of base map, hydrology, transportation, hypsography, which is the contours, land cover, administrative boundary, the toponyms, building and utilities, and so on. And for building layers, we are going to produce 3D building information at LOD or level of details 1. Yeah. The example of it is shown here. So our map is not only 2D, it is a 3D base map. So we have the height of the terrain, but also the height of the buildings. Okay, next one, please. So we hope to utilize the data produced in this project for supporting climate-informed spatial planning. So we hope to, or we are targeted to build some application for land use and land cover change detection. For instance, on the image on your side, I'm showing here our new capital in Kalimantan. So in 2019, it's still forest, and 4 years later, 2023, so we see some land cover changes over there. So the city is starting to be observed, yeah, and so on. We also would like to monitor and measure the impact of net carbon, biodiversity mapping, monitor sea level rise and land subsidence. We hope to be able to do flood modeling and analysis and other thematic maps related to climate action. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pak Ade. Now we turn on to Pak Teddy Guspriadi. He's head of the West Sumatra Regional Land Office of Indonesia's Ministry of Agrarian and Spatial Planning, National Land Agency atau BPN. Welcome, Pak Teddy.
Okay, thank you so much, Mas Tis. Thank you so much. This great opportunity for me to stand here. Actually, this is my first time to Washington and stand here. It's a little bit cool for me because from Sumatra, West Sumatra is very hot. You know, Indonesia cross equator, and the equator easily is tropical climate, and then the high temperature, typically averaging above 18 degrees, and they are generally humid and wet with the two main seasons, wet season and dry season. As a result of the potential disaster is also very high. Floods, earthquakes, landslide, wildfires, and forest fires, tsunamis, extreme waves, and abrasion, volcanic eruption, liquefaction, drought, and extreme weather. Today, I'm going to focus on spatial planning in the National Strategic Area Jabodetabek Punjur, risk disaster mitigation base. What is the Jabodetabek Punjur? It is an acronym from some municipalities. Actually, this is greatest Jakarta, consists of some municipalities, Jakarta, Bogor, Tangerang, Bekasi, Cianjur, and sometimes referred to as Jabodetabek Punjur, including Puncak and west of Cianjur, some municipalities administrative. Now, I would like to ask you to imagine that we have a city to grow with the skyline rising, its population booming. Every rainy season, it faces the same threat: flood, gridlocks, and even water shortage. It is the cost of development? Or have we simply not yet mastered how to design our space not just to grow, but to endure? Today, I invite you to explore a more resilient and forward-looking approach with informed spatial planning. This is not about just mapping where things should go, but about shaping space that can stand up to the challenge of climate, disaster, and rapid change. And we'll focus in on not ordinary area. Our case study in the Jabodetabek Punjur National Strategic Area, the economic engine of Indonesia, home to millions, and one of the most complex and risk-prone urban systems in the Southeast Asia. This is a session we look at how integrating risk data disaster planning tools and policy action can lead us to better, safer, and more livable urban futures. So let's begin with journey towards smarter spaces, stronger communities, and cities that build not just for today, but for what lies ahead. This area has a problem. Usually every year, sometimes it's look like annual meeting water, flood. Flood disaster every year. We can see, it's not clear, yeah? This flooding area in Jabodetabek is not only the result of land use conversion, but is also significantly driven by rapid development in the region of central zones. Unfortunately, the drainage infrastructure has not kept pace and is no longer capable to handling of the increasing volume of the water runoff. The situation is made worse by continued development in lower-lying areas, high sedimentation and waste disposal, and high population density in river basin and water catchment zones. Together, these factors create a complex challenge that elevates flood risk and test the region's resilience. At least there are three factors required for our attention. First is the quality of existing spatial plan. Talking about the existing spatial plan, there are some problems dealing with the quality of it. The first is administrative problem in spatial planning. In the preparation of spatial plans, which are structured Administrative problem is spatial planning. In the preparation of spatial plan, which is structured hierarchically from national spatial plan to provincial spatial plan and then to district municipal spatial plan. There are administrative constraints that prevent plans for upstream area from taking into account plans from downstream areas. Secondly, current spatial planning practices do not incorporate disaster data or projection of potential disaster for 10 or 20 years. That's very limited data that we have to conduct planning. Thirdly, there is a lack of political will at the municipal leader, as reflected in the insufficient detail provided in the spatial plan. Some municipal government express concern that the implementation of detailed spatial plan may restrict their district's discretionary authority in granting development permits. However, the detailed spatial plan serves as an ideal regulatory framework to ensure that the permits are issued based on clear, accountable, and sustainable planning principles. And then lack of law enforcement, because lack of monitoring tools and other factors give impact on controlled growth of settlements, environment protection. As we can see here, we may see the visual there. Based on the result of environmental carrying capacity, this region, it was found that has been exceeded, and we may see this high pressure on the environment in the center. Damage in upstream areas, flood trends, and land subsidence in Jakarta, and siltation and degradation of Jakarta Bay. Disaster data must be used to analyze spatial composition for spatial planning. In the preparation of the spatial plan map, disaster data is one of the most important component on the spatial allocation analysis. Based on this case study, this is the stage of determining land use allocation in spatial planning pattern. So we have disaster data on Jabodetabek area, and we have conduct the ACC analysis in order to get the spatial pattern. And this is a solution that we need to do. First is the intervention of policy interventions. The government, through the President Regulation number 60, 2020, have 10 points that must be implementing. First point is government has planned to put on spatial planning of national strategic area Jabodetabek Punjur 36 water catchment. It look like lake, we call it embung, and then so many etc. that we have to build in this area. The second point, focus on main rivers normalization program for 19 rivers. And the third, focus on development 5 canals, which are West Canal and Cengkareng Drain, East Canals, Cakung Drain, and Cikarang. Yes, this is 2 points. Huh? Okay, thank you. And then we have 10 concepts to implementing intervention of policy. And the second things for solution is technical solution by implementing basic principles of environmental protection and management in preparation detailed spatial planning. And this consists of maintain and simultaneously improve environmental carrying capacity, avoid environmental risk and damage, optimizing ecosystem services performance. Fourth, utilize the potential of natural resource efficiently, and reducing regional vulnerability to impact of climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emission. And the last one, improve and maintain biodiversity resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Teddy. Now we move on to a different country presentation from India. Let me invite to the podium. After we see actually the video, I will invite to the podium Mr. Alok Prem Nagar. He's Joint Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Rural Local Governance. We will start with a 2-minute video and then come to the podium, sir.
India has vast and vibrant rural landscape. Our rural local bodies generate revenue from multiple sources, but equitable, transparent, and efficient planning demands more than just good intent. It demands visibility and data. That's why we developed Gram Manchitra, a GIS-based platform that integrates high-resolution, large-scale maps of SVAMITVA prepared using drone technology are integrated, enabling panchayats to plan spatially, precisely, and strategically. Need to calculate the optimal length of a village road? Plan garbage collection routes. Identify the best spot for street lights or drainage. Gram Manchitra does it all intelligently. It also helps assess the solarization potential of rooftops, contributing directly to India's renewable energy goals, and even aids effective disaster management during floods. From construction planning to asset tracking, proximity analysis, monitoring, public information, this platform transforms rural governance through data-backed decisions. Since 2022, elected representatives and panchayat functionaries have been trained across the nation, empowering them to harness Gram Manchitra's full potential. Gram Manchitra is not just a planning tool, it is the digital backbone of self-reliant Gram Panchayat that are empowered, transparent, and future-ready.
Good afternoon, all. So the video would have given you some sense of what is it that the tool has been developed for. The Ministry of Panchayati Raj, which is us, the Ministry for Rural Local Governance, we are users of geospatial, financial, and any other kind of information that comes. So I have a user perspective, and that meant some good things as well as others that I didn't understand too well. So rural local governance in India, we have something like 250,000 rural local bodies all over the country. The rural local governance subject is a subject that is mapped to the states, which is our provinces. And what we do sitting there at center is nudge states into behaving in a certain manner. There is a great deal of diversity. There are states where the rural local bodies get up to 10%, 15% of their revenues through self-generation, through property tax, through share in the entertainment tax and what have you. And there are other states up in the north that don't have any streams of their own. So what the government of India does is to incentivize and to provide people with some token money. There is a part of the allotable pool that is directly provided to the rural local bodies. It's not a great deal. In a year, you'd get about $10 for every person who's on the electoral rolls in a village. And for some states, this is the only revenue that their GPs get. And for others, it is less than a quarter of what they're able to raise through their own resources. So that gives us some leverage. And we can tell them how to look after this money and what they do with this, how they plan. So the planning thing came from there, that we want the rural local bodies to formulate plans using the data that is available to the best of their abilities and to provide them with the data so that the decisions that they take are not too wrong. Jennifer's presentation had a few things. I was wondering when I started this session if I'd be able to relate, but having heard her, she made a mention of spatial planning, secure land tenure, modernization of land administration, community consultation, and climate action. So I check all these boxes, and in the course of the presentation, I'll tell you how. Normally, in a meeting of the General Assembly, as it were, in a village council, you have all these people sitting together, and there are some people who are able to push their way through. There is a lot of emphasis on activities that are capital intensive, so there is earth movers and digging and earthwork, these kind of activities that find primacy because there's money to be had. But then there are others who get left behind either because they're not there, or I'd like to think because there isn't sufficient information. And with the information, we also need training. So that's also something that we do in the federal government. We have a program for capacity building and training that is just meant to acquaint these people and to make them experts, as it were, in the use of these tools. So because the plans that they make are not standardized, we need to provide them with the data and provide them with the necessary incentives to make use of this. Next slide, please. Sorry. So for efficient monitoring and maintenance of infrastructure and for cost-effective asset and infrastructure planning for various things. So the things that they'd be doing with their money is devising ways of making roads through a village, having side drains, having walls, fixing their buildings, access to the local bus station, primary health centers, providing them with medicine. Health centers need a lot of money, so maybe the GP can't raise it on its own. But with the resources that they have, they need to do the best that they can. And what this tool does is that it provides, because this is not just a map that has been created using drone or the standard survey tools. The other sets of information, for instance, with the PDS, Public Distribution System Department, with the health and all of the departments that are there, all that information has been overlaid, and as a result of which we have a tool that has most of the components that a people in a village council are going to need for the purpose of making their plan. So you start an activity, there is a tool, they upload their plans, and once they start their activity, they signal that. There are photographs that have to be taken and uploaded at the beginning, in the middle, and at the conclusion of an activity. All the vouchers that are created in an online mode. They are all electronic vouchers, and payments are made through a system so that the money goes directly to their accounts. It is extremely important to be transparent in all this. And so Gram Manchitra provides a platform where people capture their geotags. There's a nationwide network of CORS, continuous operating reference stations. So the coordinates of any activity that get recorded are 5 centimeter accurate. Locating assets, because the resources I told you are scarce, and should they want to do something, the tool provides them with the ability to do proximity analysis, see what asset is best located where. Something like street lights, if there are dark spots in a village and they are a law and order issue, they create a law and order issue. So the tool provides you, if you specify what kind of light you're going to need at what height of what luminosity, you'd be able to locate it using Gram Manchitra. Likewise, we have also run a program for nearly 10 years now. It is for sanitation in all the villages that we have. So door-to-door garbage collection is an important thing. Village and the roads, they may be very wide, or they may be as thin as 1 meter sometimes. So one needs to know what is the best way of going about one's business. Not just that, septic tanks have to be clean. You need to know what kind of vehicle could go into what locations in case of an exigency. If people have to be evacuated for a disaster, what is the best route that they could take? And the tool can help them devise these strategies. Over the last 5 years, we've also run a program that is our principal reason to be here in this conference. We ran a program called SVAMITVA, which is a program for surveying the rural inhabited areas using drone technology. It is very cheap, it is very efficient, it is an improvised technology, so people are strongly on board. And whatever we do, people have to be strongly on board, because who are we? We are the Ministry for Rural Local Governance. We are not a survey people, we are not a rural development people. So because of the information capture using drones, we know what the roofs are going to look like. We know what the property parcels are. So with the roof design, we are able to devise the number of panels one is going to need for solarization. So that immediately tells you that if in a village I have 110 rooftops, 3/4 of this, something like 80, have pakka roofs, which is cement, concrete, or tin sheds. The others are not good for solarization. So with these, I have a big demand. Yeah, I'm not talking about my single house. The village chief is going to talk about that I have so much potential, and what offer can you give me so that we can solarize all our rooftops. So this tool makes it possible. I also said that the property parcel is very easily determined. So there is, you were able to tell if the house is kacha or pakka, which means that it is cement, concrete, or it is mud and thatch house. So based on that, the property tax rates can be determined, and it is so transparent. So you just have like a property register. There is the name of the individual, there is the parcel size, there is the covered area, and there is the additional attribute of whether it is a cement, concrete, or a mud and thatch house. So that makes it possible. Not all states do it. There are 7 states where I was trying to do a back of the envelope calculation. So I found that there is almost $1 billion of property tax that is collected over a 3-year period. So it looks like a lot, but then it is divided over some 83,000 village councils. But then this gives you a tool for very objective calculation of what is due from people, so nobody has an issue. I've already spoken about streetlight estimation, and I just told you all about property tax calculation. Our endeavor now is to get the remaining states, 36 less 7, to start levying property tax at a rate that they want to determine by themselves, so at least they can make a beginning. Spatial planning is something that we've got into recently, and for a pilot, we started doing it out in a handful of areas in each state, wherever there were clusters that were either peri-urban or they were growing. So rather than bolt this table after the horse is already left, if we can devise our road plans, if it can devise our infrastructure in a manner that leads the development rather than follow that. So with spatial planning, we are able to do that, and there are some states more enthusiastic than the others, like Chhattisgarh and Andhra, who've already decided that all their planning is going to have components of spatial planning. Capacity building is our bread and butter, and because the systems are very finely laid out, right up to the district and the block level, there are institutions that are responsible for capacity building and training. So if we were doing trainings on what a village chief is expected to do, how do you run the electronic systems, what is your role, what committees you have to be member of, how many times you conduct your meetings. We add to that the component on use of Gram Manchitra for your Gram Panchayat development plan, which is basically the village council development plan. I think I have said most of the things that I had set out to say. SVAMITVA, just to make the point about secure land tenure, the scheme SVAMITVA that I mentioned is leading to the property title in favor of the people who are living there. Some of you would be familiar that that in most of us are countries which were colonies to begin with, while the agricultural lands and state lands are very clearly measured, there are clusters of houses that do not have maps. So using SVAMITVA, we've been able to create maps for each village at an approximate rate of $100 per village. A village may vary from 100 strong to, in some cases, 250 strong. When I say strong, I mean the houses. So all the people living there get their property titles. Because the information is being created on a platform, so the information is in a digital format. It has to be integrated with the cadasters that already exist in state departments. Some states have gone ahead and done that already, and others are on their way to doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an inspirational video and presentation. I'm sure we're going to have questions and comments during the Q&A session. So moving to the last part of this session on the presentation side, I will be presenting on the intersection of land and geospatial systems with disaster risk management, how land and geospatial impacts and influences resilience and vice versa. I'll do that in the context of the Pacific Island countries, explaining their development challenges, and then making the linkage between land and geospatial with disaster risk reduction and how that has influenced the World Bank engagements in two countries, in Solomon Islands and in Vanuatu, and then go ahead with conclusion and future directions. We have the Moody, there we go. Okay, so first of all, the Pacific is not a homogeneous place. The Pacific is it's a huge area and very heterogeneous. It includes low-lying atolls, towering mountainous islands, but there are some similarities amongst Pacific Island countries, and this is the high level of exposure to climate impacts and disasters that can range from rising sea levels. We heard about the coastal issues from Jenny's presentations, tsunamis, earthquakes, tropical cyclones, and volcanoes. And despite popular belief, the Pacific Island countries actually face issues with urbanization. We do not tend to think of these islands as big in terms of urbanization, but urbanization is mounting in some of the islands. Townships double or triple in population over a period of 10 years. And that expands from what used to be a township into customary land areas. So we have a compounding challenge of vulnerability due to climate change and disaster risk with urbanization and limited resources, financing as well as capacity. In terms of land tenure and land tenure security, the land administration panorama in Pacific Island countries often involves traditional systems, customary groups, customs, as well as modern state land practices. Understanding the blend of these practices is essential for good land governance and for effective disaster risk planning and management. In most of the Pacific Island countries, customary land accounts to roughly 80% of total land. And in these countries, constitutions and legislation do recognize these customary groups to manage their ancestral land in accordance with traditions and custom. But also customary land authorities are facing challenges. They have been successful for a long time to meet basic needs and adapted to changing social and environmental conditions. But with the interaction of outsiders, with central governments, democratic institutions, religious groups, and missions, there have been instances of weakening customary forms of authority. On the urban side, what does that mean? With expanding townships, there is lack of affordable options for new settlements, and also difficulties in finding safe and resilient places for such settlements that tend to be exposed or on marginal land. What makes the panorama even more complicated is that there are ineffective institutions and poor state legitimacy. Land institutions have difficulties in maintaining safe and accurate records, and we'll talk how we are trying to mitigate these issues. And this creates a context of insecure or overlapping land tenure that can create and exacerbate disputes and conflicts that undermine, obviously, community relations as well as community resilience. Court systems are also struggling to resolve disputes, and there are huge backlogs. So moving on, some of the challenges I've already talked about, but I want to focus on the issue of limited infrastructure and expertise. We're talking about island nations and countries that have insufficient funding for developing and maintaining land administration and geospatial systems, inadequate infrastructure, and underinvestment. So what the government demand has been and request has been to work on land and geospatial, seeking perhaps as an entry point the issue of revenue and revenue generation. They recognize the significant potential of land information being used to generate value and revenue in growing urban areas, and focusing really on land valuation and tax administration. And this links really with the discussion that we're having today about resilience and disaster risk management. Our engagement in Solomon Islands and Vanuatu on the land side focuses on establishing the basis of mature land administration systems on the state side, and progressively building bridges between state land institutions and customary tenure systems. This, the theory of change goes, will eventually reduce land disputes that undermine resilience and enable effective land use planning and enforcement. I think it's good to also take a step back and really remind ourselves, how does land and geospatial really relate to disaster risk reduction? And what we are aiming to do through our work is to create the basis for data integration that is crucial for informing disaster risk management, that allows us to understand disaster risk better. On the land and geospatial systems, creating platforms that enable decisive actions and informed decision making. So strengthening the disaster risk governance to manage disaster risks. And then having a bit of a broader look at at resilience, working on fiscal resilience and financial resilience by creating the basis for land valuation, taxation, and revenue generation, helping to invest in that disaster risk resilience. On the other end of things, some of the investments in the Pacific Island countries will eventually be used to build back better, enhancing disaster risk preparedness, but also recovery and restitution, building insurance, perhaps through better valuation. So our regional strategic actions can be summed in 3 prongs or themes. One is on land records, moving from paper-based to digital land records, having regular backups of digital databases to avoid issues related to disasters hitting some of the institutions and a lot of information being lost, or having cybersecurity attacks. The second theme is on geospatial infrastructure, working on standardization, interoperability of systems, working on institutions and governance, the regulations, and creating a culture of data sharing, and working on full geodetic coverage. And as I noted already on land and property valuation, trying to bring accessibility to land market data, but beyond the valuation function, starting to look at behavioral issues related to the culture of payment and improving billing and collection. Moving to Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands is an archipelagic country that has approximately 750,000 inhabitants, and its landmass expands over nearly 1,000 islands. Our focus on Solomon Islands is to work primarily in the capital city, Honiara, and the peri-urban areas around, where we have a highly vulnerable social and economic situation, where years ago the tensions, conflict had built up, caused by land disputes triggered by inter-island migration, where we experience a rapid spatial transformation. Honiara is expected to account for more than 1/3 of the projected national population by the end of this decade, and where authorities are really struggling to deliver quality services, limited resources. Land-based revenue has significant potential, but only 40% of Honiara properties are on tax rolls, and roughly 5% of these properties actually pay. So we are working with the Ministry of Land, Housing and Surveying in the first standalone component for land administration in the Pacific, financed by the World Bank. And we focus on land administration and information modernization, looking at the digitization and security of land records, sharing interoperability, the creation of a land information system. And then with this subcomponent, moving on more to the revenue generation and mobilization, linking this information to the revenue collection system. Concurrently, we're working on institutions and policy, on policy dialogue with our clients. There is an upcoming prior action on land in the country, and connecting Solomon Islands with other countries for knowledge exchanges. Moving on quickly to Vanuatu, another highly vulnerable country in the Pacific region. It suffered a cyber attack in 2020. Its land institutions, cyclones in 2023, an earthquake in 2025, and you can see the state of affairs of the Ministry of Lands. Our priority actions with the government are to secure and back up land and geospatial records, to digitize land administration and geospatial information, and create a land management information system, and in the future, near future, also strengthen UNSO's land revenue generation. We do this through a long engagement with the Vanuatu authorities, through the Vanuatu Affordable and Resilient Settlements Project, and its TTL, Tevi, is also here in audience today. That project aims to create the conditions and the know-how, the knowledge. How do we create new settlements in areas that are customary in part, state land in part, settlements that are in safe places where development can and urban expansion can take place, and to upgrade, of course, existing settlements. I already talked about what we do on land management information systems and revenue. And just to conclude, the future direction, hopefully beyond Solomon Islands and Vanuatu, in other places in the Pacific, but you may find it relevant to where you're working. We'll continue working on land policy reform, adapting the formal land administration system so that it supports customary institutions and that it doesn't become antagonistic, recognizing customary landowner groups, giving them voice and agency in land dealings, and enabling land dispute resolution through customary institutions when that is possible, perhaps through alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. The second area and future direction is on securing access to land, land leases through voluntary leases, improving land valuation capacity and infrastructure on the revenue side, strengthening land use planning and enforcement to reduce exposure institutionally with other entities. And finally, on informal settlements and urban land, making more formal land available, working with customary authorities. We have lessons learned from Vanuatu. Fiji is doing also excellent work in this area, and upgrading the tenure security of these settlements, both on state land as well as customary lands. Thank you very much for your attention for this presentation. And now let me invite the presenters to the comfortable armchairs for the Q&A session. Please, the floor is yours. We are ready, and the presenters, Pak, Teddy, Pakade, Jenny, Mr. Haluk, go ahead. Any questions from the audience? All right. So, Catherine, please go ahead.
So, good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for your presentation. It's a huge task that all of you are working on, and recognizing that with land and geospatial systems. But when we talk about climate action, when we talk about what we need to be planning for the future, there's also the marine side, and integrating land and marine information and systems and planning. So I'm curious, in your countries, Indonesia, you have a lot of coastline. India, you have a lot of coastline. Is there some thinking and planning around the importance and the ability to integrate the marine side into the land side as well? Thank you.
Any takers, perhaps, from the geospatial side? How do you see these issues? Akade?
Okay. The coastal and marine base map also falls under our responsibility. So we used to have two different maps, one base map for land and one base map for, actually three base maps. One for the land, one from the coastal area, and one for the marine areas. I mentioned about the revision of our geospatial information law in 2021. In that revision, there's a change. That instead of having three kind of base maps, now we have only one base map integrating all areas starting from land, coastal, and the marine areas. So, the key aspect is the coastline, the coastal line. We are mandated to produce three coastal line, the lowest tidal, the highest tidal, and the mean sea level. Those three must be produced, and as long as these three lines are determined using the same reference, which will be our geoid, then we will have an integration between land, coastal, and marine. I presented the current project on land area. We are looking now from some other possibilities to start also the marine side. Okay, we have been able to collect or to acquire bathymetric data only for medium and small scales. So we have to go actually to in the marine area closer to the big cities, closer to the where economic activities are, the port and so on and so on. We like to have a more detailed and better quality, better accuracy of our bathymetric data. But so we agreed with your idea, and we are going towards that. Even our law has facilitated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Joint Secretary.
Thank you. So I began my presentation by saying that we are not geospatial, we are not urban development, we are not rural development people. We are people who are in the business of encouraging the rural local bodies, the village councils, to make their own decisions and to be empowered with more and more powers by the state government and nudge them appropriately in that direction. So to that end, the fact that it is the village council who are making their own plan, using their own resources, so it is by no means a plan that is partial only to land, because wherever the marine resources are important to the communities, a large part of their spending goes in that direction. Now, about the geospatial information that is needed to take informed decision in respect of their marine resources as well. In the course of the SVAMITVA scheme that I spoke about earlier, Survey of India are also here with me, and with the help of that scheme, they were able to create a nationwide network of 1,000 plus CORS. I think it got commissioned in October 2023, and since that they are mapping the boundaries, including the ocean levels accurately, so that the same extent of accuracy that the SVAMITVA maps now have, 1:500 scale, 5 centimeter accuracy. So we can have this along the z-axis, I think it's 20 centimeter accuracy. So that same accuracy is also going to be determined in respect of the marine boundaries, and possibly in another 2 years from now, when they would have completed this exercise, the quality of information that they'll have in respect of their marine resources would match that of their land resources. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. One thing I would add on Indonesia to Pakade, based on my work in Indonesia, is they also, for the first time last year, under the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, the Coastal and Marine Agency, which was located under there, signed an agreement with ATR BPN to share spatial data. So I think one of the things we've been talking about right in this conference is how do we share data? How do we integrate our databases to be able to improve planning? So there was an agreement between these two agencies who had separate information to be able to update it in order to plan and preserve the mangrove areas. And I think that's a good practice, right, to show us how we can integrate our data sets even when they're in separate agencies. So again, you don't have to have a completely integrated system, but you at least have to have some way of sharing and interlinking the data and planning together so you can take actions to help mitigate climate change.
Thank you. I believe there is a lady that is preparing for a question. No, she's looking at her phone. Okay, so my question to the Joint Secretary, perhaps. You said we're not a surveying agency, we're not a rural development or an urban development ministry. Tell us a little bit, how do you work with other entities, though? You know, the SVAMITVA is an initiative of your ministry, from what I understand, but you probably need to work on the technical side with surveyors. Then you operate, you know, on revenue generation and collection with other revenue board authorities and so on. You have a very unique ministry. Explain a little bit the operational side, as it's, I think, quite a unique way of doing things.
Thank you, because nothing what I said in the presentations would have led me onto this aspect that you've just raised. First of all, our main legislation, the national legislation for rural local bodies, came out only in 1993. And our ministry came into being 11 years after that, because it was felt that the states had not done enough to devolve. So we are pretty young, and my job I've already explained, that we try and get states to devolve more and more power to the rural local bodies. How this scheme SVAMITVA started was that the state of Maharashtra, which is one of our provinces, which have good level of devolution, where panchayats make a lot of their money through property taxes, they had something called a property register. And they knew intuitively that because there wasn't any map, they were missing out on some of their revenue. There were plots that were untaxed. And so they, on their own, approached Survey of India, and they drew up a bilateral contract in which they piloted the use of drones in the calculation of property tax using property parcels that had been extracted from drone survey. So Maharashtra, because the body, and it was the Ministry for the Rural Local Governance that had approached them. So once they had validated this, they came to us and they said that we need you to pick up the survey tab. What Survey of India has done using drones and going at the back end, processing information, extracting features, then after ground verification, incorporating those changes and turning it into individual property cards. That's what they call them. So while we've been able to find expenses or find somebody to pick up the expenses, for instance, the printing and the ground verification costs, they were borne by the state. Some of the part was borne by the people themselves. And but this tab, they didn't have somebody, and so they came to us. And immediately we thought that this was so delectable because a large part of our country did not have maps for these areas. And if there is such a technology now available, why don't we turn it into something good for the rest of the country? So that is how it came about.
Excellent, fascinating inception, and I'm sure that it has really made a transformational impact on rural local bodies, and makes, you know, the idea of devolution, decentralization, all the more interesting. It's also a perfect segue to the next session after coffee break that will focus on issues of land and property valuation, for property tax, for own source revenue generation. It starts at 4 p.m. We have great presentations from East Asia Pacific and South Asia regions. I would like to... Did I miss something?
No, I was just saying it's an exciting panel. So we're going to have a group of panelists from all over the region, two from East Asia and two from South Asia, with Catherine and Sarah, who are going to help us moderate. So we hope everyone can join us after the break.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.